Like its predecessors, Crash Bandicoot 4 is a pretty hard game. It employs a very old-school approach to challenge in a platforming game, putting the focus squarely on tests of skill through levels that grow increasingly complex. As such, there's quite a few levels in this game that will put up a formidable fight against you. Here, we're going to talk about the 15 that we felt were the hardest of them all. Note, there are spoilers ahead for Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. Number 15. Offbeat. As the level that introduces players to the Mosquito Marsh Mansion, it's one that stands out in our memory, thanks in large part to its carnival feel. But it also stands out because of how challenging it can be. True to its name, it uses music in some interesting ways for platforming, and is almost entirely focused on putting your platforming skills to the test. Towards the end, there's also a rail grinding section that requires some quick reaction time, so make sure to stay on your toes. Number 14. Give it a spin. An excellent way to introduce players to the spinning mask, but one that still demands you to pay attention. Give it a spin isn't particularly tough in its earlier stages, but it gets more complicated as it progresses. The second half of the level has you making long, floaty jumps across massive distances while navigating platforms and obstacles with precision. It's all about maintaining control of your spins and jumps, but that is easier said than done. Number 13. JETBOARD JETTY. There's a number of individual sections throughout all of JETBOARD JETTY that come together to make for a pretty hard level. One section sees you hurrying through a tough platforming section while keeping up with the wooden rafts. Another sees you driving a jetty while avoiding whirlpools and cannons while luring enemies into mines. At the end, there's even a mini-boss, which isn't exactly a cakewalk either. Number 12. DRAGGIN On. Just like Give It a Spin, DRAGGIN On is a level that puts your skills with the spinning mask to the test. There are a number of tricky jumps in this level, made trickier by enemy placement and large distances between various jumps. In particular, sections that combine dragons, crumbling platforms, deadly gongs, and long jumps can be devilishly challenging. Number 11. The Crate Escape. Putting you in the shoes of CORTEX, the Crate Escape is much more of a methodical and slower level than Crash fans are usually used to, but it still manages to put up plenty of challenge. Whether that's through long stretches of platforms that won't hold your weight for too long, or carefully navigating precise and dangerous jumps around nitro crates, or a combination of both. One particular section is also full of long jumps to make and enemies to avoid, and using Cortex's abilities smartly here is crucial. Number 10. Rush Hour. Dingodile levels require a much different kind of platforming skill than Crash and Coco levels do, thanks to the character's slow movement and greater focus on vacuuming and hovering. And this level will demand that you do every one of those perfectly. Rush Hour is one of the longer levels in this game, and from moving platforms to crumbling platforms to moving and crumbling platforms to dangerous amounts of TNT and nitro crates to jumps that have to be judged perfectly. This is a level where you constantly have to be alert. Number 9. Snow Way Out. Of course, there had to be ice levels in a platformer, in a Crash game no less. Snow Way Out is gleefully tropey, and it makes use of all the tropes you'd expect it to in truly challenging ways. Slippery ice? Check. Having to judge your time stopping perfectly so you can get past impossible obstacles? Check. Ice blocks that will shatter underneath your feet if you stand on them for too long? Check. Gauntlets that keep combining all of these elements and more to truly put you through the ringer? Double check. Number 8. Toxic Tunnels. Oh boy, there's just so much you have to be aware of in this level. There's enemies with spiky shields. There's cylindrical slabs to move past that are constantly rotating. You have to avoid getting zapped. Toxic tunnels are full of sections that need you to react quickly to a series of challenges. It's a pretty long level as well, so if you get caught in a rut, you might find yourself stuck on this one for a while. Number 7. Stowing Away. This one, like a few others, is a bit of a trip. Any level that puts as much of a focus on flipping the direction of gravity will be tough to wrap your head around, and Stowing Away makes use of that mechanic heavily. It's ingenious in its execution, but also proves to be incredibly challenging, because it combines the gravity switching mechanic with tricky jumps and a number of sections that require skill, quick thinking, and quicker fingers. Number 6. A hole in space. There's no shortage of set-piece boss battles against the big bads in Crash 4, and this fight where you take on Entropy and a female version of him from an alternate universe is probably among the hardest. One by one, the level requires you to use all of the quantum masks, and each obstacle course is a short burst of grueling difficulty. It's not a particularly long level by any means, especially if you don't die a lot, but again, that's easier said than done. Number 5. Fossil-fueled. Cortex goes to a prehistoric jungle with all of his scientific equipment along for the ride. You'd think it would be easy for him, but it really isn't. Fossil-fueled doesn't do any one single thing that makes it extremely difficult. The entire level, from start to finish, requires you to be quick with transforming enemies into platforms, and correctly timing Cortex's dash is absolutely crucial in some places. Like all Cortex levels, it's a slower moving affair than most other levels in this game, but it still demands constant focus. Number 4. Dino Dash. What's a Crash game without a few thrilling chase sequences where you're running toward the camera while trying to escape certain death? Crash 4 has quite a few of those, and one of the most thrilling ones comes in Dino Dash. Those chase sections are appropriately challenging, but even outside of them, the game keeps throwing new elements into the mix, from rail grinding to devious crate smashing puzzles to navigating deadly rivers of lava, and much more. Number 3. Nitro Processing. Between constantly switching, meticulously crafted platforming obstacle courses, and tricky enemies and enemy placements, Nitro Processing certainly isn't lacking in elements that will make your head spin. It's a classic test of platforming skill, constantly ramping upward in terms of difficulty, thanks to how densely it starts packing its series of obstacles with enemies that also need to be dealt with as you get closer to the end. Number 2. Food Run. Crash's own journey in the futuristic snacks dimension isn't any easier to deal with than it is with any other character. Food Run is a perfect example of that. The level constantly puts you through your paces, throwing one challenge after another at you constantly, requiring not only precise platforming, but also quick and clever use of your masks. It's also an incredibly well-designed level, so the challenge feels that much more satisfying. Number 1. Cortex Castle. Appropriately enough, one of the final levels of Crash Bandicoot 4 is also one of its hardest. Cortex's domain is as devilishly difficult to get through as you'd imagine, full of death traps, tight platforming sequences, various sections that have you using your masks in increasingly complex ways, and much more. When you're beginning this level, proceed ahead with the knowledge that you may very well be trying to make it through for some time to come. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.